University education is wasted on university students, and I know that because I've been one. One thing that stands out to me this time around as I go back for a secondary degree is how many resources are there. Like really, I went to the university library and the thing has 4 stories. A buddy and I used to go to the library at the community college I went to and just walk through the aisles of books back and forth, grabbing any title that looked interesting and then bringing them all to a reading table, sorting through all the ones that suddenly didn't look interesting now that they were on the table, and then flipping through and just picking a few things up. I mean, it was a little bit like surfing the web, except in tangible form, and it was awesome. If I was to do that for this library and walk among all the shelves, it would take me the better part of a couple of years, which is good because that's about how long my degree is going to take. So just thinking about the raw amount of information, the amount of knowledge, the amount of resource there, it's staggering. And that's just the books. Then if you go a step further, think about the library computers. When you're on campus, you have access to all kinds of free software, the entire Adobe suite. This will give me an opportunity to learn things like Photoshop, InDesign, After Effects. It'll teach me how to use Premiere, which would be handy in this context. Also, you go beyond that. On the 3rd floor of the library, and this is common in most universities, they have a 3D printing lab and access for the students to come to learn 3D modeling and to learn how to make prototypes, which is exceedingly cool. Now, the interesting thing about these things I've mentioned so far is that they are resources, not classes. And I think that university students in general will get way more out of their education and way more value out of their time at university than they would thinking about the resources of the university than thinking about the tracks of the university. If you just go to classes, you will get a set amount of value. I personally believe that students will get way more out of their university education if they think about the resources that are there and take advantage of them as resources rather than focusing exclusively on their track. For example, let's say that you become an English major. You'll take English classes, you'll learn English things. The fact that you're an English major does not mean that you cannot learn 3D modeling on the 3rd floor of the library. So why wouldn't you? It's free, it's available, you have experts there, you can talk to people who know what they're doing, you can talk to people who kind of know what they're doing. Oftentimes they're easier to relate to. And then you'll be able to learn a skill which will be useful in the real world. Well, it'll be useful in the real world, in the pretend world, and every other world you want to live in. The thing to think about is the resource. If you just go to classes, you are selling yourself short. If you just go to class, you are selling yourself short. Don't do it. Like really, really don't do it. So we talked about the library, which is kind of the heart of the university. If you go beyond the library, think about things like the ceramics lab. If you find a friend who's in the ceramics class, there's no reason why you couldn't learn pottery as a side gig. Let's say you're not actually taking a pottery class, let's say that you are. In either case, it's an opportunity to learn all kinds of things hands-on. Similarly, most universities have a metal shop. You have access to plasma cutters and all the high-tech fancy toys because universities tend to be extremely well stocked. I had a friend when I was in my undergraduate degree who worked for the machining lab, and as a result I was able to dig around in their offcuts to get some pieces of metal I needed for a personal project. If I had known about that a year or two sooner rather than the last year of my education there, that would have been awesome. So many things. Beyond that, you have the wood shop, you have access to all kinds of hands-on crafts. There's the museums. Most universities have a few museums, one of natural history, one of art. Those are kind of the standard 2. Beyond that, who knows? They usually have touring exhibits. So then let's say that you want to learn a foreign language. Typically speaking, they will have language labs in place for students who are taking classes in German or Chinese or whatever. But just because you're not taking the classes doesn't mean you can't drop in on the labs. And there's usually international students that you can hobnob with and learn all kinds of things from. So the opportunity to learn a foreign language, either from class or outside of class, the resource that is there, I mean, there's no good reason why you can't walk out of college with 4 languages. It would probably take all your time, but you could totally do it, and it would be free, and it would be awesome. So why would you not do that? In college I had the opportunity to study Chinese, and that was a fantastic opportunity which I did not take enough advantage of. I took the classes and I skipped the resource, which was the language lab where they had students who already spoke the language and an opportunity to practice and pick up the vocab from people who had actually lived in Taiwan or mainland China. Yeah, kind of regret that now. but now I have a second opportunity, so it'll be nice. Other opportunities, you've got the Planetarium. Typically you'll have, one of my personal favorites, experts. The university is a place where you have literally hundreds of PhDs in every conceivable field. So let's say that hypothetically you were trying to smelt iron and running into trouble and started to become suspicious that the ore you were using wasn't actually iron oxide, just something reddish. You can take it to a geology professor and say, hey, would you take a look at this? And get a free opinion right there and then. And find out things like that in order to stain an ore red, it only has to have like 2% iron. So yeah, that's basically what I had. Absolutely worthless for smelting. Now I know. Made use of that resource. So there are dance classes, social events, murder mystery dinners, whatever you particularly want to learn. Let's say that you want to learn swing dancing. Typically they'll have a swing dancing night at a university, and that's an opportunity for you to pick that up, or Latin dancing, or whatever. The opportunities are absolutely incredible. If you want to learn a musical instrument, there are either students who know things, or you can slip into workshops or take classes. But I want to stick away from classes for the sake of this discussion, because I want to think about the university as a pool of resources. And your membership as a student is essentially your membership to enter in and use these resources. And even if you're not a member of a particular class, you probably know a student who is. So there are ways to make use of these resources once you are in as a student. Thinking about all these things, I'm actually a little bit tempted to be a student for life. If I could find some way to maintain that habit, I mean, I'm not rich enough to pull that off by a long shot, but it's a little bit tempting to just be a student and pick things up and learn things and show up to the machine shop lab and get to use the CNC machines or whatever it happens to be. I've got a couple of years. I'm doing a second degree, so I'm going to try to take advantage. I'm going to try to learn everything I possibly can in a structured and orderly manner. College, think about the resources, not the track. Your major is mostly irrelevant for the sake of the discussion of the resources. Learn here, don't fail to learn here. This is where the good stuff happens. If you've enjoyed this video, consider checking out some of the others. Subscribe below, click this button which is hanging right here. Comment below what skill you would ideally learn, taking full advantage of all the university had to offer.